Today we have James Dent, who's just gone from couch to London's marathon, running all of,
apart from the wee stops.
Apart from the wee stops, all of the event at London, which I'm sure you'll agree is an amazing achievement. So we've got him here to really talk through his entire experience and see what we can learn from it. It's a very inspirational feat, and I'm really excited to get started. So,
Thanks.
James, what were you doing before you found the club, or even thought about doing London's marathon, or what was before all this?
Right. So look, let's be up front. I'm 56, and prior to this, I would go to the gym, and as my wife Lydia would say, I didn't seem to do very much when I'm in the gym, so I'm not some fitness freak at all. I used to go to the gym really for general toning, but I never used to go on the running machines. I used to do a little bit of cross training use, but not really a lot more. Golf now and then, but even then that scaled that back because of time with work. So when I was younger, I used to do a lot of sport. But for many years, particularly with problems I've had with my knees, in my early 20s, I probably stopped playing rugby when I was about 32, 33, family commitments as well. So genuinely, for the last decade or two, apart from maybe a few games of cricket on cricket tour once a year with mates from university, I have done very little apart from a bit of gym stuff.
Yeah, and those knees, they were probably the most common theme throughout the build-up. What's the background with those? Is that just
Right.
an old rugby injury, or?
Yeah, rugby injuries, although I think it was probably caused by the fact that those of you of a certain vintage might remember old Stan Smith trainers, which didn't give you much support. You compare to the ones I've got now, which I had to invest heavily into really to get the right ones. And so I used to train at the beginning of every rugby season, road running in my old Stan Smiths. My parents had no idea about advice on trainers or that sort of stuff. And I used to pay for it out of my allowance, so it was money was short. And then it just got to the point in my final year at university. I was lucky enough to captain at Birmingham University the rugby, and within probably about the fourth or fifth match into the season, and I just medial meniscus. I tore that, but I ended up having a problem with my cartilage. Thankfully, back in the day, this is about 1988, all the problems that happened then meant that I couldn't play rugby for 4 or 5 months as I recovered from that. And I've had 3 knee operations since then on both knees. So I've got no cartilage now in that left knee. And that was a major concern for me. And that was probably from that age onwards, and certain conversations I had with my last knee surgeon, who I know I've told you before, but he said if after my last op, if he saw me doing any road running, he'd do a drive-by shooting. So maybe that's part of what was in my head. I thought, well, no, I can't do this. But I've never really thought of any kind of longer running. And that was then. But I used to watch Lydia in the last 4 or 5 years, member of the club, watching her go out and train. But I just thought, no, I'm not a runner, and I'm certainly not one of these that chats. Because I thought to myself, why would you run and chat? And anyway, off the back of deciding, and I'm happy to put a bit more explanation on it, to run the marathon, I joined the club, the running club, and then found that actually you can run at a different pace to the way I used to run in my Stan Smiths as a young man, where if I didn't try to half kill myself, I didn't think I was doing a proper job. So that was one of numerous lessons I've learned in the last 6.5 months, I guess.
Pacing,
yeah. And the fact that you actually can talk to people, and people might want to talk to you as well, particularly within a friendly club. And genuinely, I really mean this, people have been so friendly and so kind and supportive, particularly when they knew that I was on this journey over a shorter period of time to do the London Marathon. So yeah, I think just my own mind frame around running has changed a lot, from being something that is painful, constantly painful, and really you have to really push yourself to realize that it's actually a different regime, particularly when it comes to preparing for something as big as a marathon.
So why London? Why would you do a marathon, go straight to that when had you run a 10K or half marathon before?
I think I may have run might have run a 10K when I was probably 15 or 16. I did the
It's a different life though, isn't it?
yeah, different physical state I was in as well then, being that age. I think I did, if everyone remembers, there was a whole period of time around, I would say around 86, when there was Run the World. It was to Tears for Fears music. You remember it was off the back of Live Aid and everything, and I happened to be working in London at the time, and I remember doing the run through Hyde Park, and I think that's probably, since then, that's really been it. There was nothing else off the top of my head I can remember doing any kind of running.
So why London Marathon?
Well, so I have my own business, and a client that I dealt with, he's a huge supporter of the charity that I ended up running for, because I don't think I could have got into the marathon really without finding a charity who had enough spaces and were willing to take me on. So I think it was a Saturday. I remember chatting to David, and I said, well, David, I can't run a marathon, because for whatever reason, he was prompting me to run the London Marathon. I said, mate, I can't do it. He said, well, what about a mud runner thing or whatever? I know very little about those. Then, of course, it's better for your knees. So I kind of said, look, let me think about it. So I spent the next 2 or 3 hours Saturday afternoon just reflecting on it and thinking, and I don't know why, but it was just, I had this moment where I decided, I'm going to do this. And there never seemed to be any doubt in my mind. I had 1 or 2 moments maybe when the whole shock of at certain moments of thinking, oh my goodness, what have I taken on? But that's a natural thing, I think, to feel that, how big a hill is this to climb, and is it possible that I can do that? You'll always get moments of self-doubt. I didn't have many of them though, maybe 1 or 2 in that whole 6 months. So I think once I had it in my head that I could do it, or I was going to do it, and then I got accepted by Shooting Stars with a charity who I ran for, children's hospices, and that was it. I never kind of looked back from that moment, but I think I'm the kind of person who, once I realise I'm going to do something like that, I want to give myself the best chance. So it meant investing in some decent trainers.
You had to raise a bit of money as well?
Yeah, I had to. Well, there was a minimum amount that I needed to raise as well, which was £2,000 for me. But I felt fairly optimistic amongst all my friends, all contacts through work and companies I dealt with. I felt optimistic I'd be able to do that. But I was thinking at the top, I'll get to 4. And at the time, my wife was due to run that. She's deferred a year because she had a particular knee injury that meant she couldn't train so hard. So between the two of us, we managed to raise best part of £9,500, so, which blew us away.
Fantastic.
And I do think that's another reason why I think some people step away from marathon. I think they think that it's an impossibility to raise the kind of money that people need, whether it's 1,500, £2,000 or whatever, but it actually isn't so difficult. I know we end up raising a lot more, but there were certain reasons why in the financial world I work in, I had a bunch of very generous people who just pushed it that bit further, and that was great. But it gave me a focus as well as to why I was doing it.
Yeah, and it added a bit of pressure.
Yeah, it did add a bit of pressure, but I think because look, we did a quiz night where we thought we'd raise £750 at best, and we raised 1,500, and that's just and that was a bunch of people we didn't know. That was at the retreat, and they were very supportive of it. So, but you can do stuff, I think, where you raise a couple £100 here or there, £300 there, and before you know it, it soon ramps up. I didn't so much feel the pressure because I felt comfortable that I'd get through the £2,000 I had to do. So I was okay, but I took it as a positive because it gave me a purpose, not just doing it for myself. There was something else involved.
Yeah, the pressure I was more talking about is if you've got all these people that are forking out money for you to run this marathon, you better run the marathon, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
should we get on
true.
to what gave you this confidence? Obviously you got involved with the club pretty early on. Was that something you'd always, when you decided to do the marathon, you decided you were going to join Cheltenham Running Club, or?
Well, because Lydia was already here at the running club, I already had a good reference to the fact that she'd really enjoyed it, really liked the people. It was straightforward, your Tuesday, Thursday nights and Sunday morning. I think various things kind of spurred me on. I spoke to you, and of course you wouldn't know me from Adam, and I think you were already Lydia was much further progressed to me, and I thought, well, I'm joining the coach Couch to 5K group, so it's going to be a slow build. And I think you maybe unwittingly put a bit of doubt down the phone line about what should be realistic for me. And of course, I'm a bloke, and I think, right, okay, I'm going to disprove you on how quickly I could go through this. So I think I needed a track anyway, and that's why I said to you, look, I'm going to need more help than that. So what could you do to help me, give me the stepping stones to get to where I need to get to, and anything else I need to take on board. So I did used to various other things, like after certain longer runs, I'd have an ice bath, which is something I detest, and my language when I'm stood in it for the first minute and a half is terrible, and I really am quite well. Try to keep my voice down because of the neighbours, but I just knew that I had to do that if I want to give myself that moment, which was being at the start line. That was where my focus was. It's just being at the start line, knowing that I was fit. So I get a bit emotional at times when I suddenly think about things like that. Is actually being at the start line fit? That was my biggest concern. But so I think it's making sure you got all the kit, understand what the process is was really important to me, and I needed your guidance, your professional guidance, to tell me what you should do, and then getting the apps from you like Runkeeper, things like that all help to give me the necessary equipment to make the path as logical and as sensible as possible, and not just try to wing it, because I think some people do try to do that, and I think you see that at any marathon where some people are running, where I think some of them clearly have underestimated what they needed to do and tried to wing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's just fairly naive.
And I don't know whether you were planning on winging it, but when you told me what you wanted to achieve, and the fact that you had the knee issues, the fact that you hadn't been running, in the years before, contacting me, the fact that you wanted to start with Couch to 5K, I mean, that's a 9-week program, a 10-week program for most people. So that would have taken us from October, you started, or
yes,
September?
Yeah, October.
It was October?
Yeah.
That would have taken you basically to December, and then you've only got 3 or 4 months to get to the London Marathon, which would have been really tough to go from 5K to marathon distance, right? So that's why I was saying it's a big challenge.
But I had no reference point for that.
No.
And actually, early in the first few weeks, we suddenly realised that it wasn't 12 months we had to prepare, because the October 2022 was the last time they had the October one because of the pandemic, and so I had it in my head that I had a whole year. And then when it turned out that I didn't, my initial thought was, oh, bloody hell. But actually, within a matter of a day or two, I was thinking, I really only want to be doing this for 6 months, not 12 months.
When did you realise that you had 6 months instead of 12 months?
Probably, I guess, within a couple of weeks of. So
it was in October. It was quite early on.
Yes, yeah, it was.
But still.
It was early on.
Yeah.
And Lydia was saying, look, she prefers. I think it helps when you turn all the. You've got a choice, haven't you? When it comes to a lot of these things that you do, you can take a negative or a positive view on these things. And she was very, look, winter is great to do it. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? She said, look, because she tends to, when she runs, she kind of, she gets very hot, very sweaty. I don't tend to sweat much, never have done. And I don't get incredibly hot, so I really have to push myself to start sweating a lot. And I thought, well, okay, yeah, you're right. What are we doing through the winter? Not an awful lot, really. So maybe this is a good opportunity. And just knowing, April never looked that far away, because we know what happens. It's October, so you've got, it's autumn, and then before you know it, bloody Christmas comes around, doesn't it? It does come around quickly. Then you've got New Year. And then you think, well, actually, beginning of January, and I've only got till April 23rd, so it didn't feel that long a time to train. And as long as I felt that I was following the adopted track that you gave me of distances, etc., then as long as I was on track, I was okay. I just felt that every step I was taking was in line with what I needed to do. So I'm not going to worry about what's going to be going on in 6-7 weeks' time, or through Feb, through March, and we ended up going away. We were planning to go away for 3 weeks to see my sister in February, and of course we could have looked at that and thought, well, that's a problem, but we found a way around that, and it worked in our favour. Well, it worked in our favour. We just made sure it worked in our favour. So I think sometimes you will have lots of times where you're at a fork in the road about something negative, and it's just up to you to decide what route you adopt. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of runners, if you listen to somebody like Chris Evans on Virgin Radio, he's a massive fan of, and he became a fan a number of years ago, didn't he, about running the marathon. And he's one of those people that when you do listen to him in the morning, and I do, he's very good at the finding the positive rather than negative. And it can sound a bit trite to some people, but it doesn't take a lot to kind of just change your position on a subject like that. And he, so there was people and I never bought his book. I didn't need to. I had Your Process to Adopt. Although lots of people are very good at providing information about what you should be eating, particularly as the weeks got very close to the marathon, I'd get WhatsApps from people saying, "Oh, you want to read this, Denty?" So you get a lot of help and advice. And then there was a lady here at the club who'd run the marathon, and she was, very, very positive about it, because everybody is positive about it. The difference is people hear that positivity and just think it doesn't apply to them because they're never going to run a marathon, which is absolutely my position for many, many years. And a story I've never told you is not that long after I left university, or around that time, I can still remember I went to Birmingham University, and one of my mates, Tomo, Scottish guy, and we got really drunk, as you do at that age, and maybe since. And we bet each other our first month's paycheck. So we were obviously still at university, must have been, based on the bet, that whoever ran a marathon first would have to pay the paycheck. No, I haven't brought it up with Tomo ever since.
He's not done it?
No, I don't believe he has, no.
Wouldn't it be crushing if you find out he has?
Mind you, if he goes back now, because both of us started work in 1989, so whatever that figure was, it probably wasn't that big an amount of money.
Still bragging rights.
Yeah, it is, but you just kind of, most people are like, that doesn't apply to me. Running a marathon is something that other people do. It doesn't really apply to me. And that's what massively shifted to me that Saturday afternoon, I think. And then I never really looked back through the process, even though there were, tough moments.
And let's get into that, because so far you're making it sound like it was plain sailing. I mean, you had to increase your distances by quite a lot every weekend. Was it 2K or 3K every single weekend, or you had some drop back weeks as well?
Yeah.
I mean, what were those long runs like?
I think, first of all, it was a slow build. So it was kind of getting towards a 5K because of the couch to 5K. And then running 5K. Lydia was so supportive. Like she is generally. She was, every time I did something, she would be effusive in her praise, which was lovely. So she was saying, "You're doing so well, you're progressing so well." So there was a lot of positivity that came from home. But because I was running at such a comparatively cautious pace, it didn't feel as tough as I was expecting it to feel. So, you do, the catch to 5K, obviously you're doing run walk a lot. And even something like that felt, well, that's okay. This is manageable. So, and to be honest, in amongst the club, the amount of people who were running, such an array of ages, physical, natural, athletic ability, you're taking inspiration from that anyway, because you can see people are running 10K who you wouldn't necessarily meet in the street and think, oh, well, naturally, 10K runner. But people of all abilities and ages, I think, running, and that was helpful too. But I think because the long runs were only at the weekend, you'd be doing the interval training on a Tuesday night, you'd run maybe about 5K on a Thursday night. But as you'll remember, Connor, I did not adopt, I didn't stick rigidly to that process, because I said I have to protect my knees. So my major emphasis, so a number of weeks, I didn't do the Thursday night. I did some of the Tuesday nights. Yep. Early on I did some of the Thursday nights. But then I got to a point where it's starting to get longer, where really I thought, I've got to protect my knees, because the issue isn't whether I'm going to run them, the issue is, am I going to be fit at that start line? That was what it was all about. And I thought, well, if I have to hold back a bit and suffer a bit more on the day to get myself fit there, then it means that I'm going to have to rein myself back from some of what ideally I'd have done if I adopted the 100% of the track that you've given. And you were thankfully willing to be flexible with me and say, yes, you've got to listen to your body, listen to your knees, and then rework around the process you'd given me to something that felt manageable, because I didn't want to mess it up.
Yeah, look, I mean, there are a lot of marathon programs out there, and a lot of them have a lot more runs in their week planned than what I prescribed you, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the one that helps you run non-stop for that marathon distance is the long run, right? That's the one. So if you said to me, the knees are playing up a bit, it'd be like, right, don't do your intervals, don't do your tempo run. Do you think we can get you the distance that we've got in the plan for this weekend? And somehow you managed to hit those distances consistently enough that you could keep up with the progression of them, and get where you needed to be, a few weeks out from the race.
Yeah.
And so then you got to that longest run. I think the knees were playing up a little bit, weren't they?
Just starting to
about
kind of
3 weeks
grumble.
out.
They were starting to swell a bit, but the ice bath thing, all I bought was like one of these outdoor bins, plastic bins, and I'd fill it with water and put about 6 bags of ice in. And so that I did that every time. One occasion I didn't, and I did notice more swelling in the knees, particularly the left knee, which is the one without any cartilage in it. So yeah, that was, but it, that did help, because I just felt I was on top of it. But you're right, when I was getting to the further long runs, and remember, every time, when you did your 5K for the first time, you're feeling pleased with yourself. You're feeling with the progress you're making, because you're part of the couch to 5K, and already you're ahead of schedule. So, but you're in line with the schedule you've got to do to get through the marathon. Then you achieve 7K, 8K, then you do 10K, and you're thinking, like, I was okay for that. Although there were lots of lessons to learn about. I mean, blimey, I remember, some of the basic things, like making sure I'd been to the loo properly in the morning before I gone anywhere. That happened once where I hadn't. And I remember this guy saying, stopping, and typical the general, of people out there, 90% of the people out there are really, kind of decent people. This guy stopped and said, look, do you need a lift? I said, mate, you do not want me in your car at this point. So these are the kind of lessons that naively you know nothing about. But it was then around somebody else I spoke to who's a medic, and she said, so how are you feeling at the end of the running? And I said, are you feeling elation when you do the longer runs? And I said, no, I'm not feeling anything. I'm really knackered. And sometimes I've had a slightly dizzy head, and she said, you are not taking enough on board. What are you taking on water-wise, and what are you taking on in those kind of sachet things as well? And I went, what are you talking about? So there was, inevitably, there's a lot of naivety. And then I realized, okay, I've got to buy these things. What shall I buy? Got advice from my husband about what I should get. And then suddenly you start to realize you've got to get this regime of running, and then deciding how frequently you need to take the sachets. I know there's a better word, isn't it, than sachets? What do you call the things?
Supplements.
Yeah, or whatever it is. Plus I bought those pills that before I ran, I'd have breakfast, say, at 7, and I'd run typically around 8:30 or 9, to give my time for the breakfast to fully digest, and also to take one of those pills as well that you can, that give you lots of vitamins, etc., and energy.
Yeah.
So yeah, the electrolyte stuff. So I did all that as well, and start to learn more how much more I needed to do, because there were still times where, certainly not the longest run I did. Was it the longest run? No, it was the longest run. I felt very jaded at the end, and I had to get somebody to come and pick me up in the car. So that's when I did 21 miles, which was my longest run, and that was 3 weeks before the marathon.
Excellent. So, how about the marathon itself? What was the day like?
The day was, everybody's telling you you're going to run too fast at the beginning, and the day will be amazing, and the crowd will get you through, etc. So you already pretty predicted, it's quite predictable that it's going to be an amazing experience. And I had hardly even watched it on the telly before. I watched a little bit on the telly, but not much. I've never been there, and I think go to the London Marathon. I'd recommend to people just to watch it as an experience, because it is one of the most positive things you'll ever see, with a disparate group of so many different people of ages and physical abilities. And of course, it's very positive because they've got pockets of supporters round and about, and as I had through the charity or family and friends as well. So when I woke up in the morning, I had everything kind of mapped out about what I needed to do, but I was tempted to have porridge, because I'd never done porridge, and I thought porridge would be a great idea, and I thought, no, if I take a risk on what I'm having. So thankfully I avoided that. And then it was lovely because a mate of mine managed to get us mentioned on Radio 5 Live, which I hadn't any expectation about that. So you're getting lots of positive messages from people saying, best of luck today, Denty, hope it goes all right, you'll smash it, all that usual stuff. So I enjoyed the all on me stuff, because by this time it wasn't realistic for Lydia to run, so she deferred it. So I quite enjoyed all of that focus and positive support. So from the morning onwards, I changed some plans. They wanted us to meet early with the charity, with the whole group, and I thought no, because I wasn't going to be running till 11 in the morning, about 7 minutes past 11, which surprised me. I thought we'd all be heading off at about 10ish. So I wasn't leaving until then, and then I thought, right, well, I'm not going to go for this 8 o'clock meet in Blackheath and then faff around for 3 hours. I thought, no, I've got to be selfish here. I'll wait to leave it to the right moment for me to go. And I took the train at 9 from the centre of London, where a mate of mine's got a place, he's friends that are staying in the centre of London. So I then took the train, but everything is well organised and well planned. As you can imagine, for something like the London Marathon, they've got it nailed in terms of what you should expect, what train you take, what time you should take it, and then being on the start line or near the start line, getting yourself prepared, stretched off, etc. It's a slightly surreal experience, because you understand the theory of what you're going to be doing, and then you're there, but it's a slightly out-of-body experience. You kind of can't quite believe you're there. And of course, you can imagine, well, I know how positive and kind and everybody is in the running club, so you kind of think to yourself, well, it's just a bunch of people like that. They're all in the same boat. They're all a bit edgy and nervous about it, but very excited about it. But it is a massive, there's a whole, it's a whole event, isn't it, where people are going off at certain times. I'd specified what time I expected to get around the 5 to 5.5 hour thing, so I ran in the 5:15 category. Took ages to get through the start line, but that was fine. And then I knew that I was going to start at a steady pace, because everybody told me I wouldn't, and I wanted to disprove that in my stubborn way. And yeah, it just, I didn't run, if you remember, I didn't run for 3 weeks. So my last long run was going to be 2 weeks before. And then when I'd had that real feeling of, I get the feeling that my knees are starting to get not happy with me. That was 3 weeks before. I was meant to run 2 weeks before the 22-mile thing, and then ended up deciding I've got to bin that, because of that risk of getting to the start line physically fit. But the day itself, even when you're running the first stretch, people say, oh, there's not so many people about. There's always little pockets of kids with their mum, or older people, and you got your name on your vest, and mine on my charity vest. I didn't want to put James down. I put Denty. That was what most people, anybody who knew me called me Denty, but I got them to shout out James, because then I knew that they knew me, as a means of trying to spot people in the crowd, because that's not always that easy to do that. So you kept getting all these positive people clapping, saying, come on Denty, all that sort of stuff. So it made me giggle quite on a number of occasions, So even through the southeast of London, you're winding your way through. It is a really long distance, but I was just focused on Tower Bridge, which is just prior to the halfway point, and I knew that the group of people from the charity were going to be there, and I hope Lydia would be there with a few of the others as well. So overall, it's an experience I probably never expect or plan to do again, but I managed to build my pace. I mean, look, clearly it all worked in my favour, because I never ran 1 mile that was, it was always at least as quick, if not quicker, than the previous miles. And that was, I had an earpiece in where I was listening to the time of my, on my Runkeeper, but I didn't, only broadly knew what was going. It just turned out that I just kept building all the way through. I wanted to beat 5 hours. I did 5 hours, 5 minutes 57. So just under 5 hours and 6 minutes. And I knew at the end of it that I just was going to be pleased at what I'd achieved and not, overplay the whole under 5 hours. Because if I'd done it 7 minutes quicker, it'd have been under 5 hours. But really, 7 minutes quicker doesn't make any great deal of difference.
The first one's just about finishing, mate.
Yeah.
You've done really well just to not blow up at the 3/4 mark, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. And how are the legs afterwards?
I would say the first hour afterwards, I really felt it. I'd never hit any wall, because I really didn't want that. I didn't want to have that feeling of an absolute hellish last half hour running. I never had that. I had to push hard the last 4 or 5 miles. Somebody told me that actually the second half of the race only starts at 20 miles. Didn't end up being the case because of that sensible build, and you were very correct. You were completely correct in terms of saying, look, just build slowly, just be sensible about it, build over the first quarter, to the first half, and I did exactly that. So but I really felt it for the first hour, but in a very odd way. After that first hour, my legs just started to feel better, and there is no doubt about it. And it makes it sound like I'm making it up, and all I can do is to tell you the truth. But my legs recovered better from that long run than any of the 18 miles, 19 miles that I ran, which I was really surprised. My knees have been okay, and I didn't do any ice bath straight after the marathon because I didn't know where I could go and get. No, didn't have the option. So it was. I wasn't in the most social mood. I thought I'd be in a celebratorial mood, but I didn't. I was quite happy after an hour or two having a few beers and something to wait to just get in the car with Lydia and go home and not stay up in London and celebrate like I thought I would do. So that surprised me as well. But look, I was just wanted to wake up in my own bed back in Cheltenham on Sunday morning.
All right, James, the runners have arrived for the sessions tonight. What would you say to someone who's thinking about doing a marathon, let alone London's marathon?
I would say just step away from the inevitable, it's not for me. Because if you saw the people I saw running around, some of whom I took photos of, women in their, I would say, late 60s, early 70s, people older than that. And they found a way through to finish, and they got an awful lot out of it. It's an experience like no other, but you just have to disengage from the 20 to 30 year view that I had of this isn't relevant to me. And believe in yourself that if you take the right advice, etc., then you will get it. And people with far less ability than whoever you are have managed to do it. And that's easily forgotten. We like to dismiss it and we like to put it to one side and go, that's not what I do. And I really hope that people will open their mind, because I just had that Saturday afternoon with David where I just decided I was going to do it. And I've never looked back.
Congratulations.
Thanks,
Thank you very much for
Thanks for your
inspiring
help.
me and so many of our members, James. So well done.
Thank you.